bedding in this canoe? Look, you've made your raft and now you can float in it. Right. Welcome to Primetime Mitch, and today's review rally is going to focus on The Burning from 1981. Joining me today are the hosts of Our Life in Horror podcast, Sam and Brendan, who are going to be discussing the finer topics of this overlooked slasher gem. We categorise these things, so I'm going to talk a little bit about one subject, they will talk about another, and we'll sort of bounce our opinions around back and forth over the net in today's review rally. Hopefully you'll enjoy today's show, and I encourage you to check out the links below to find out more about Our Life in Horror podcast. They are a real down-to-earth, knowledgeable channel across Instagram and X and YouTube. There is a lot to look at and a lot to digest, and you're just going to get a little part of that today. So let's go.
So I basically thought this film was going to be a Friday the 13th remake, and it pretty much is. It uses the exact same campfire urban legend story that's been used over and over and over again from as far as we can remember, but I'm glad that it puts its own unique spin on things to make it different and stand out from the rest of them. What did you think?
Basically thought the same thing. I definitely thought it was going to be just like Friday the 13th, based off the movie description. We didn't look into, well, I didn't look into the movie too much beforehand besides reading the description. I thought maybe it wouldn't be as good as Friday the 13th, just, my brain just thinks that if it comes out a year after well, it's not the original movie, but you know what I mean. But I think I was wrong. Yeah, I just thought it was going to be another summer camp slasher, I guess.
Story strength. And I believe that The Burning is very good when it comes to the story. You are immediately given the story at the beginning as opposed to it being sort of sprinkled over the movie from the start and then you find out at the conclusion. This one kind of says, this is what happened. And this is the present day. He was a disliked person to begin with. I was under the impression at the start of the movie going in blind that this was a kid who was just bullied by horrible kids and counsellors alike. He's actually the caretaker who's an alcoholic, who's had run-ins with some of the kids and isn't very well liked at all. I think the kids at the start are goofy as hell, by the way. He's gonna have a heart attack. He's gonna go crazy. And what this movie does really well, I think, is the timeline. He is in hospital for a year. He is still terribly burned, some fantastic burn effects when his arm shoots out of the curtain to grab the orderly, who, by the way, is an asshole. I kind of wish he got the shears at some point, but obviously there was more of that to come. And then, of course, you have another 5 years later where he is fully able to leave the hospital and they tell him, you know, to try and rebuild his life and try and work with what he has. And that's sort of more realistic. If he'd have been damaged and burnt and then come straight back, which you see so often in a lot of lesser movies, that would have been a downgrade on this film. So the timeline is very good, I think. I think it's really random, but I get why they're doing it, just to sort of show what he is about now. The fact that he goes out to immediately sow his oats when he leaves the hospital, and you get that kind of driller killer maniac kind of scene with the prostitute, and I always find that a bit curious because it's not like he can unveil himself. I get the feeling that he didn't really think that one through, but I know they're trying to set it up that he has got this side to him now where he's just angry and wants to take it out on everybody. You don't really get a transition between him in the city in his apartment and then going out to live at the camp and stalk the kids at the camp. You literally just get the scene in his apartment where he kills the prostitute, and then immediately you go to the camp and he's there already. You don't see a journey at all in between. Kind of sad about that. Would have liked to have seen how he got there, but you know, it is what it is. And I think the story is helped by the fact that the characters are so likable. There's only really a couple of douches in there. I really like Dave. He was my favourite character, actually. Michelle and Todd are good people. They're just doing their jobs. Eddie, that guy. And I had a sort of a sad soft spot for Glazer, even though he was a bit of a moron. But they hold the story up because they are innocent in all of this. They had no part in what happened previously, and obviously 𝐒𝐈𝐷's just an angry, destroyed person who just wants to take it out on anyone and anything. I do think, though, that this movie is a little bit of a sort of a rallying cry towards bullying and sexism, which is told throughout. I think there is an underlying message, and the character of Alfred is regularly bullied and looked down upon. And even though 𝐒𝐈𝐷 himself wasn't bullied or a child that was bullied, I think that Alfred and 𝐒𝐈𝐷 probably share something in the sense that they feel outcast. And certainly now 𝐒𝐈𝐷 would feel outcast because of how disfigured he is. He can't live in real society anymore. Alfred struggles in the camp, being an outcast from the rest of the kids. So there is sort of things woven into the story there that actually ring quite true. So overall, I think the storyline of this movie is nicely told from the start, and it's pretty straightforward. It's not overly convoluted and complicated. And yeah, I think it's one of the strong points of the movie.
I also thought that the scene with the prostitute was a little random. I think I actually brought that up to you.
Yes.
Yeah. In my opinion, I think I would have rather just seen him go right, maybe, to the camp.
Yeah, like you said too, with the whole he's getting angrier and angrier, and that's kind of how I explained it to you too. You know, you're living a life where you're completely burned. It's not a very easy way to make friends, especially during the 80s when, like you're saying, bullying is definitely a huge message within the story. So it's him taking out his anger, and maybe it being that final step to being like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to go f***ing kids up for making me feel this, or making me this way.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like, it's happened. I may as well just go all in for it now.
Yeah, okay, I guess so. It just felt really random to me, but I guess if you put it that way.
Yeah, I think when you hear sort of that, he realises that he can't live life on the outside, so the only thing he's got left is to take revenge. That sort of justifies that opening scene with 𝐒𝐈𝐷 in the city just a little bit more. I always felt like they just sort of, there's a huge jump between that and the camp. There's no journey back, and I kind of wanted that, but I do get the motivation for that scene.
I think the effects in this film are really good. They're obviously done by Tom Savini. I almost didn't have to double check that fact before I made that statement. I noticed that he uses a lot of the same tricks and stuff that he used in the original Friday the 13th film that he does in this film. For the most part, I think they all pretty much hold up. I think 𝐒𝐈𝐷 looks fairly good. I think some of it's a little dated, but other than that, I think all the kills are gruesome. They're fun, they're gory, they look pretty realistic. What did you think about the special effects?
Yeah, same. We did get a lot of kills in this movie, which is always appreciated. With it being 80s, obviously there's no CGI, which most horror fans appreciate because we want to see practical. Obviously there's a couple effects, like, is it when he's in the raft? And you can see that it's his head coming through and then with like a fake body.
Yeah.
But it makes it almost comical. Like I just laugh when I see that. So it's not a bad thing. And I mean, it's what they were working with back then. So I thought it all looked good though. It all holds up well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that this movie is underrated and overlooked because of the timing of it. This did not do that well at the box office despite a bright start. It lasted only 4 weeks in the top 50, and it had stiff competition. We'd already seen the first Friday the 13th in 1980, but they followed it up pretty quickly with Friday the 13th Part 2, which was highly anticipated. Put that in with Happy Birthday to Me, Graduation Day, Final Exam, Eyes of a Stranger, and also when you read up on it, they were re-releasing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at that time as well, very successfully. And unfortunately, it does succumb to these elements. Fans knew what Friday the 13th was and they couldn't wait for a sequel, and they went out to watch that as opposed to the one that they had never heard of. Better the devil you know, I guess. And I think that maybe the name as well might have something to do with it. The Burning really doesn't have that slasher feel like Sleepaway Camp, and Friday the 13th I think is a tremendous name for a movie, and I think that that's part of the reason for its immediate success. Those are the facts, but my personal opinion is I enjoy this movie more than Friday the 13th. I think it's a real gem. I think the effects are fantastic. I think the effects actually are better in some aspects than in some of the Friday the 13th efforts that followed, particularly part 2. Obviously, you had Tom Savini working on The Burning because he liked this script more than the idea of working on a sequel for Friday the 13th, and you can tell he does an awful lot in a very short space of time. He didn't have a lot of time to create the face of 𝐒𝐿, and he managed to make something very effective.
So I think this movie is getting a huge resurgence in the horror community. Scream Factory released a Blu-ray years and years and years ago, and it's recently this year, or last year, it got a 4K re-release from Scream Factory. That's apparently it's a really nice release, but I think it's becoming more and more and more popular, and especially now that Scream Factory's kind of put it in the sights of everybody. It's on all the movie shelves everywhere. You can buy them now anyways. But yeah, I think it deserves its recognition, and I think it's going to be getting it.
I'm so glad this is getting more recognition now, and it's nice that Scream Factory have made the most of the opportunity to put it out there and give it a second wind almost. Like I said, I do think it falls behind Friday the 13th when it comes to mainstream recognition, but I guess mainstream recognition isn't always the be-all and end-all.
Overall thoughts on the movie, I actually really enjoyed it, and I was wrong when I thought it was going to be worse than the original Friday the 13th. I actually think I might have liked it better.
Rough.
I enjoyed it. I thought there was like a lot of like fun teen drama going on and hookups, and I like that sort of thing.
It has some really impressive shots in the film which would hold up in a movie of today, such as the arm draped over the raft and the blood tricklets running down the arm to the thumb and then it fading out. I think stuff like that looks great today and would have looked fantastic back then. The score as well is very, very impressive, especially when they're approaching the canoe. It's low volume, it's very ominous, and you get the feeling something terrible is going to happen. That sort of thing inspires work of today, and that sort of thing is prevalent in horror today, that dread feeling, and I think The Burning does it very well.
And I like summer camp setting, so you can't really go wrong with that. Like we said before, the effects were good, and it's just a fun revenge story. Just a fun 80s slasher.
A really good slasher, just as good as Friday the 13th, if not better in my opinion. Many others would stick to Jason, but I love The Burning. I think the acting is good. It's not corny, cheesy acting. It's believable behaviour. I think there's a moment when Sally is killed in the woods, and it's real incoherent shock. There's no 3, 2, 1 action scream. It really feels like she is genuinely shocked by this, what is about to happen to her.
Yeah, it's totally early 80s slasher vibes. It's a lot of fun. You get to see a extremely young Jason Alexander in the movie with a head of hair, surprisingly, which is always, I'm just blown away that he was in it. Unfortunate he didn't die. Spoilers, I guess, but yeah, the effects are really good. I like the story. It's simple. It's fairly fast-paced. There's a couple issues I have with it, but not too many. So
they incorporate happy bluegrass music in to show the joy of summer camp and kids just wanting to have fun, and then you get that heartbeat music coming in when 𝐒𝐿 is stalking them, and they make the decision, and quite rightly, to spend a lot of time with the kids before things start going down, so you get a connection with them and you get an understanding. Overall, I think The Burning is vastly overlooked and a fantastic slasher, and I urge anybody to watch it if they haven't done.
I think it's a good overall slasher, and I think everybody should see it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I want to thank Our Life in Horror for joining me today for this review rally. It is always great to get opinions from people across the pond, like-minded people who have a passion for movies and for horror specifically. So thank you to them. Please check out the links below. All the links are below in my description. You can go and see their page, see what they've got to say, listen to their podcast. This has been Primetime Mitch Review Rally. Please smash a like down below, hit that subscribe button and notification bell for more videos in the future. And as always, there will be more. There is a train coming. See you guys later.